So, thank you all for coming to Students in Open Source, the OpenInfra University Partnership Program, Growth and Lessons Learned. So today with me, I have Corey, whose photo has, oh, there we go. I have Corey and Steven, who are both instructors, professors at different universities that the OpenInfra Foundation works with. At the end, we can cycle back to this slide for the contact info, or you can find us after the talk. So, jumping right in, what is the UPP, the University Partnership Program? Well, the University Partnership Program is a collaboration between the OpenInfra Foundation and our projects with a number of universities. We started with North Dakota State University and have grown since then to this lengthy list here. And more recently, we have finally gotten our first university outside the US as an associate member and are working on building out our partnership program with Konkuk University in Seoul. So that's very, very exciting. Woo, yeah, finally. Our general focus is to get more students exposed to and working on open source early so that they can benefit from all of the skills that they learn working in an open source community. There are benefits to the open source project itself and the general ecosystem. The number of times we've had member companies being like, there's just no one to hire. Well, we're working on that. We're trying to alleviate that vacuum by kind of pre-training students to be able to work in open source because open source is so prevalent in our industry. And we have a web page. Yay! That also happened in the last 6 months. So if you're interested in hearing testimonials from other professors and students, seeing videos that students have put together about the work they've done on various OpenInfra projects like OpenStack and Kata containers, you can check them out there. So, first, I will let Corey go through our partnership with Valencia College and give you perspective behind what we've managed to accomplish and where we're going.
Yeah, thank you, Kendall. And yeah, thanks. And I don't think some of you realize how difficult Kendall's job is to get two professors on a stage. I mean, if you flash back to your college or university days, you try to get an appointment with them or grading, and you know, they just kind of, they're never there. They're in committees. Good luck getting your dissertation worked on or whatnot. But yeah, this is, I think, a Herculean feat for Kendall to get us both here. But I want to thank you for your time. And so who am I? I'm actually not new. I've actually been around for almost 10 years. I worked at Oracle. They hired me for curriculum developer on their Oracle OpenStack software. So I actually worked on Kilo back in 2015, and I did get it up and running before the engineers, by the way. Thank you. But I also worked on Cloud Native, and then eventually that all evolved into the Oracle Cloud infrastructure. But now I'm in higher ed, and so at Valencia we have this, I started a new initiative called the A2I Academics Industry, and I bet you most of you thought it was probably artificial intelligence again, but no, I kind of coattailed it off of that and grabbed your attention, and it's Academics to Industry initiative. And so coming into higher ed from 25 years in IT, I could tell there was a big chasm between industry and academics. And so with this initiative, there are a couple of goals here. One of them is to address the big four skills that I keep receiving feedback from mentors and students that they're lacking in four skills. They're lacking in Linux, they're lacking in Git versioning, Python programming, just to get them into programming, and then containerization and Kubernetes. Those are the four skills that this initiative is really focusing on to skill them so then they can be ready to start their careers when they finish and they're graduated. But there's something else that, there's another component of this, and that's the full student experience, or the SX. If any of you have worked in contact center, that you've probably heard of CX, well, this is SX, and this is what it all entails. It entails four tenets here. The first one is the curriculum. The students have to have the knowledge, right, to build those skills and then build the abilities. So at Valencia College, we're only into about almost 3 years with the cloud computing program. The first partner we brought on was AWS. They offer courseware and free labs, which is always nice to hear from a nonprofit organization. But we also partner with Google Cloud for their Skill Boost labs as well, and as well as the OpenInfra folks to integrate within one of my seminar courses. We're also in the works of partnering with Oracle Academy. We're going to do some workshops with Oracle Academy, access and to experience multiple cloud platforms. And I'm sure multi-cloud platform in their IT offices there. So that's why that's why it's important to expose them to as many cloud platforms as possible before they graduate and then start their careers. The second tenet is mentorships. And back in about, I think, fall 2023, I attended the Vancouver conference. And there I actually met up with the maintainer for Tempest, and we started discussing about how to get students more involved, being mentored. And so I had 2 students originally mentored with him that worked out so well that we've been doing mentorships ever since. So typically it's around 3 to 7 plus students being mentored. Besides Tempest, they also are mentored by the Manila maintainers. Thank you very much over there. As well as we just started with Stack HPC. If I don't know if anybody here is from Stack HPC, thank you. I have a couple of students being mentored with them on the Magnum project. The third tenet are internships. So we have these mentorships being integrated with one of my seminar courses, but students also want to do internships. So working with the internship office at Valencia College, it's a bit of a more formal process. The students have to fill out activity sheets, they have to do reflections, they also have to work one-on-one with their mentors again. But the great thing about this is that if the student had completed a mentorship, all they have to do is do an internship right after that semester, so they're doing back-to-back work with their mentors, which increases the amount of time that they're actually working on the project. So it goes from 3 to 4 months to 7 to 8 months. And that's what we want. We want them to build a rapport with their mentors. We want them to dig in deeper into these projects. So having back-to-back mentorship and internship really helps benefit the students in these cloud programs. And then finally, just this past couple of weeks, Valencia College, I've been working with my contracts department and legal team, and we can officially say Valencia College is now an official training partner of OpenInfra Foundation. And the goal here is to have students prepare for the COA, the Certified OpenStack Administrator exam, and then take the exam with Mirantis. Mirantis will still provide the exam, but Valencia College will be able now to officially provide training to Valencia students to prepare for that, as well as adults if they're migrating from another industry. If they're coming from, say, hospitality into IT, they can now get trained and get certified for the certification. So we're trying to build this pipeline for organizations like Red Hat, Walmart, et cetera, for new employees, possibly interns, and creating new opportunities to contribute to OpenStack. And with that, I thank you for all your time, and I'm going to turn it back over to, I'm going to turn it to Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning, folks. I'm going to try and take a slightly different view of this. I've been living in industry for too long now. I'm the old guy on stage. And so I argue that software isn't eating the world right now. We're drowning in software, and most of it's mediocre, duplicative, and bad. And I came into this space, like the actual problem statement. So I worked for Microsoft for the last 7 years. It's a second tour there. But what I was seeing 5 years ago was a shocking lack of open source understanding in production. Now remember, this is the new Microsoft. This is a Microsoft that actually uses open source throughout all of the infrastructure. And there was still this set of bad dependency decisions being made along the way. I'm also seeing kind of that, I think in a world where anybody can be a programmer with very little training, all of a sudden we're losing the software engineering skill set that actually allows you to deploy and develop at scale with a societal impact. And that's the problem I started to set out to do. And then we've got whether you call it sustainability or maintenance or any of the other words that get splashed around here right now, we've got this growing problem with how do you maintain all of these things. So my aha moment was, well, all of the well-run's the important words in that sentence, open source projects that I've been close to for 30 years now, 35 years now, they all have exceptional software engineering skills. And what if we created a course where we gave them, students the basics of software engineering, the basics of open source, and the basics of IP? Because if I grew up in Toronto, if you're an engineer in Canada, you take a half-term course in intellectual property for engineers. So what if we combined all of this and gave them a student project in an active open source project with a mentor? And that's kind of what kicked this all off. Semesters of Code was up and running. The initial experiments, I ran 2 classes back 2 years running at Johns Hopkins in the computer science department. And the interesting challenge, we had 20 students the first year and a collection of about 5 projects participated. My challenge on to my mentors was, you need to give me 2 mentors for your open source project. That's for resilience. And at least 5 student projects kind of thing. And so we ended up with a collection of projects. We got 20 students through. The second year we ran it, because we were still running under COVID protocols at this point, this has been up and running for 4 years, I might have quietly slid 20 more students from University of Galway onto the back of this. So what was a morning class in Baltimore was an afternoon class in Galway. But again, we get to the end of this, we've put 60 students through their paces. We guessed that it would be 60 to 70 hours of student time over a semester. It turns out it's closer to 80. But we were worried, the mentors and I, as we kind of wrestled with this, because this wasn't going to scale properly. It wasn't going to scale on me as instructor in front of a classroom to try and tackle an industry problem. It wasn't going to scale in the curriculum, and it wasn't going to scale on projects either. Word on pedagogy. I walked into this in a reasonable way into the first class. My wife is a school teacher and beat into me the basics. But the thing you start to learn is, I came across between the first and second iteration of the course, Jean Lave. She's an anthropologist just up the coast at UC Berkeley, and I think she's still publishing and probably emeritus now. She had this concept of legitimate peripheral participation. That link there, I'm assuming the slides will be available, points off to the one book. It's a heavy lift of a book to read, even though it's a very small book, because it's a book written by an anthropologist for other anthropologists. But there's still that idea that it all comes down to apprenticeship and mentorship. That's how people learn. And then at the same time, I discovered Carl Wiemann's work. He's a Nobel laureate physicist. He's at Stanford. And they discovered that there was this enormous problem that as the graduating class stepped into the graduate world at Stanford, they didn't actually know how to do physics. And so the physicists, being physicists, came up with experiments on students to figure out what are we doing wrong, kind of thing. And again, what they learned was, if you restructure a class into give them the reading the night before and then force them into teams of 4 or 5 and give them problems to solve while you walk amongst them, you actually end up in they teach one another better than anybody that's experienced can teach down to their level. And that moves the whole bell curve to the right, and it holds it to the right for a longer period of time, was the interesting thing they learned. Around this time, 2 years ago, I got to go to Carnegie Mellon. And there, what happened, if you'll kind of wind that calendar back a couple of years, we hit up that bad bump in the economy. There was CMU students were losing their internships. So the university cobbled together an internship program for a number of them. And I was invited, I was told by the person who runs software engineering for undergraduates there, this looks like what you do, can you come and do it here? So we went and we built an internship class. This was a dramatically different environment. The students, it was an internship, so we had 20 to 40 hours a week of their time, not 80 hours over a semester with 4 or 5 other courses banging for their attention. And we ended up in a situation that the real professor, remember, I claim to be adjunct. What that means is I am a lowly paid instructor in this world. But the real professor said, look, all of software engineering is about communications. So we're going to force the students into teams of 5. And that's when I got to meet Kendall. And so Kendall was really supportive and came up with a set of projects for us that summer where we forced the students into teams of 5. And it's just a remarkably different outcome. Over that 12 weeks, we had them presenting to us at week 4, week 8, and then the final presentation, and watching their confidence go up. Because again, the only rule was everybody presents. So your team of 5, every one of you is going to spend 2 or 3 minutes talking to the class kind of thing. They still had 2 mentors for a large project now. And this was a situation where, sorry, I should check my timing. This was a situation where they were tackling big work on OpenStack projects, which was really interesting. And we ran the course one more iteration last summer. And in running it last summer, some of the things that changed, we ran it out of CMU in Qatar, in Doha. And same thing, but we added one more team, so it was 25 students kind of thing. We're still seeing excellent outcomes. Even with the restructure of the class, instead of a 12-week summer semester, they normally have a 6-week semester, and my mentors pushed back. Sorry, Kendall's mentors pushed back and said, we can't do anything in 6 weeks. And so what we did is we ran the classroom in 6 weeks, and then we added 4 more weeks where the kids went remote. And so they had 10 weeks, and the mentors felt that they could still work with 10 weeks instead of 12. And again, this was fascinating because they learned to trust one another in the 6 weeks together, essentially doing daily stand-ups and getting work done. So when they hit the ground and they all scattered home for that next 4 weeks, and suddenly they were all on Zoom, it took them a day or 2 of rockiness, and then they hit the ground running and kept going. And again, they turned in phenomenal work. One of the things, again, this thing about mentorship and near-peer mentorship, there's a paper reference there that's kind of interesting. And as much as I hate the discussion of boot camps, because the world doesn't need yet another team of JavaScript developers building websites, in my very biased opinion, the thing that was fascinating was actually seeing the near-peer mentorship work. That was craziness. They brought themselves up. The one OpenStack project was, the OpenStack project had to manage a Kubernetes cluster. And the student project was to retool all of the error handling because it was a little bit rough from when it was first done. And this was a group of 5 students that didn't know what a container was on day 1. And like week 8, they were still coming through the learning curve of trying to get to a stable environment that they could test and build on. And they were panicking. And we also coach the students. We have a little coaching meeting every week, and that falls into one of 2 things. One of them is, you should really talk to your mentor about that right now. Don't wait for the weekly meeting. The other was, it'll be okay. Those are the 2 flavors of meeting you have. And we got them through this last bit. The reason all of this is exciting to me is going back to that original problem. Peter Nauer wrote a paper back in '85 called Programming is Theory Building. And at the bottom of it, he's trying to tackle the question at the end of his career on why is maintenance so hard? And I think as we go back to my problem that I'm trying to solve in this with software engineering skill is really around the idea, the aha moment. Not only is all learning social learning, but all software is social software. And there's a way to build that knowledge generation on generation into a project. And that's why we're continuing to do experiments. We're trying to run the experiment one more time this year at CMU. And I'm also looking at doing a boot camp in Africa, because what we're looking at is non-traditional work. And I also want to bring summer internships into Microsoft. And so that's the other experiment that I want to do.
So, we got 5 minutes for growth. And also, thank you very much to both the professors, and we have a third one here as well that have all participated. Yes. We also have a number of mentors here as well that have helped bring students into our communities. So we really appreciate your efforts as well. So, growth data. And now we wait for the thing to load. Yep, nailed it. Okay. So over time, building these partnerships, have started to keep track of how many students we have going through these programs. And it's really exciting to see these numbers get higher and higher, and being able to add more universities onto the end as we actually have students go through these programs. So I'm really excited to actually have data to show, and I do plan to have like number of patches pushed and that sort of thing as well in the future. But it is really interesting to me also to see how many students we've had work on not just OpenStack, but Kata containers as well. And I do hope to build out the program further and include StarlingX and Zool as well when we have contributors from those communities that have the time and willingness to mentor, because it's definitely not an easy thing, and we really do appreciate all of the time spent on that. What else do we want to do? Bring in more universities, especially ones not from the United States, because open source is global. The ecosystem that open source is built in and influences and impacts is global. Students everywhere should be learning about open source, and anything that we can do to bring more students up to speed before they go into the workforce is incredibly valuable for the entire world and the whole open source ecosystem. So I have conversations going with a few universities in other parts of the world, but how can I better work with non-US universities? Obviously, like, I went to school in the US, so that's the scope of my familiarity, but I know that things don't work exactly the same everywhere in the world. So if you have any ideas or know universities in other parts of the world, please come talk to me after. I would love to meet you and be introduced to them. I also plan to have a form on that website that I introduced at the very beginning of the presentation to kind of collect and collate these conversations in a more organized fashion, because right now it's all super organic where I just randomly get introduced to people, and I would like that to be more discoverable and for me to not be a bottleneck. So that's another thing that I am going to try to build out in the future. The other thing I wanted to mention quickly in our last minute, and then maybe we can have a question, is the FLOSS mentoring group. We actually have a presentation on Saturday, well, a panel on Saturday, talking about using mentorship as an on-ramp to open source contributions. So if you're interested in this topic that we've been talking about today, please come check out that panel. It is also an open group that meets like monthly usually, so if you're interested, we have a Discord, yeah-ish. We all have day jobs is the problem. So if you're interested in joining that conversation and bringing your own ideas, we really would love that as well, so please get involved. And questions, can we have one question, Julia? Does anybody have a question? Oh, 1 minute, yeah, we did it.
I have a question.
Yes, Jay.
So I've done some of this through other programs like MLH or Outreach in the past.
Yes.
If we have a qualified candidate come out at the end of that,
Yeah.
that we don't have a home for,
Yeah.
what's a good place to like maybe get them into this pipeline at a later point? Because you said there's lots of people looking, like, I mean, I don't want to just throw them at a jobs board because you almost have to mentor someone
Yeah.
how to find a job.
Yeah, that is, okay, so I'm gonna restate the question, assuming we're recording. So when a student goes through one of these university programs or Outreachy or a similar mentorship and open source program, and they come out the other side and they're qualified and they're ready to get hired, where do they go? Well, we need to formalize that. One thing I have been working on is with companies like Bloomberg, we have had them come in and talk to students and be like, we are going to be hiring. This is when our job apps are going to open, and then talk a little bit about how open source is used in that company. So I am out of time and would love to answer any more questions out in the hallway. All right. Oh, yeah. Sure. Sorry, Jay. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, the question is just, do we have experience working with high schoolers? Not yet, but we can definitely take this conversation into the hallway and figure out something. I think that'd be great. All right, thank you, everyone.